Hi everybody, we're back to topic 2, archaeology and systems ecology basics. Hopefully you've been able to solve most of your problems with respect to figuring out how to make things work for yourself so that you're now comfortable and able to start the material for this course. Your assignment for this topic is topic 2, Archaeology and Systems Ecology Basis. Your assignment for reading from Fagan is chapter 1. And you will have noticed that in the lecture PowerPoint portion of that particular topic, I do not address Fagan at all. In fact, the two lectures appear to be completely different from anything that Fagan has to say. And yes, they're not quite completely different, but they are independent of your reading assignment. And there are several important reasons for this. First of all, this is not an archaeology class. Neither does Fagan nor I want to teach you about archaeology. It's a content class. But in order to understand the content, in order to evaluate the content, I think it's really important for us to have the same vocabulary, which would be the vocabulary of archaeology, and to have some understanding of our interests as archaeologists, our research interests as archaeologists. And so what I've done in lecture 1 of topic 2 is to give you some basic definitions, which many archaeologists use, as well as to discuss some ideas that archaeologists have as they approach the research problems that they have or the evidence that they're trying to interpret. This gives us a common language with which we can evaluate the rest of the book. In fact, Fagan will use words like artifact and feature, byproduct material, and I really think that it's important for you to know what these mean, and you need to know what these mean up front, and so that's exactly why I have given a lecture which is a complement but not an outline or a copy of anything that Fagan discusses in chapter 1. Lecture number 2 focuses on the definition of culture. It focuses on the different characteristics which all cultures around the world share. Now, all cultures around the world that exist now, but also all cultures around the world that existed in the past. And I think that's very important for us to understand. So again, Fagan does not have an opportunity to go into this kind of, into any kind of detail. Of course, the lecture 2 doesn't really go into detail either, but at least it gives you some of that basic information, again, so that we have a common shared understanding and a common shared vocabulary. I would particularly like for you to pay attention to that one slide that deals with systems theory, because basically the approach of the book and the approach that we have in this class is an ecological approach, looking at the relationships of human beings to other human beings, to other societies, to each other, to the plants and animals in their immediate vicinity, to major global environmental changes that occur as well. It's an ecological approach. No human being exists in a vacuum. No human society exists in a vacuum. We are constantly interacting to a greater or lesser extent to everything around us. Today, certainly, global warming is a hot burner item, and no pun intended on that one. Everybody's talking about it, whether you believe it or not. It's really not important. What is important is the fact that, and of course it is important to us immediately, but the bottom line is that we have to understand that the environment is in constant change. And your book and other books always say that human development, human change, social and biological, cultural change, have been against a backdrop of major environmental change throughout the planet. It's an interesting way of looking at it, but the word backdrop is sort of flat. If you think about dioramas or those still pictures that are part of cartoons, you always look at the action in the front. And so if you use the word backdrop, it sort of implies that it's not particularly important as such. But it is important. So the word backdrop, I think, is misleading. Human, biological, and social change and cultural change has taken place in concert, in response to major changes throughout the world. Today we are talking about global warming. Would you be surprised to learn that global warming has happened time and time before? Usually interspersed with global cooling, which has happened time and time before. And so for those 4 million years or so of human existence, our ancestors have always been responsive to their environments. Not necessarily consciously so, but let's face it, when you had major environmental changes, you had to eat. And if the environment changed in such a way that your normal way of getting food no longer works, you found another way, or you did not survive. And so certainly, we have always been aware, consciously or unconsciously, of environmental change. And maybe the word we should be using is adapted accordingly or not. And then, of course, that impacted whether we survive or not, or the quality of our survival or not. Adaptation does not necessarily mean that a best choice was made. So I want you to be aware of that, and I want you to be aware of this particular ecological approach and the concepts of systems theory, because I think we're going to come back to this, and especially aspects of environmental change, which we're so concerned with today. I wonder sometimes if it's not environmental change that we're worried with, trying to stop environmental change, but it's a matter of trying to stop our way of life. But that's a different discussion, and it's really not appropriate, and I probably shouldn't have said it at all. But change is what human existence is about. Change is what the planet is about, and those ecological relationships that involve human beings and our environment. Change is a part of that interaction as well. With respect to Fagin, please pay attention. Certainly read chapter 1, because I haven't really outlined it in any of the PowerPoint lectures. But please especially pay attention to concepts of time. We very much focus on linear time, calendrical time. 1 year follows one after the other, after another. 1 day follows after another, after another, after another. In many parts of the world today and in the past, people also considered cyclical time, the round of ritual and seasonal change that would follow, what we would say year after year, but the round of change that existed over and over and over again. And very often it is this round of change that human beings try to adapt to as they try to exist. Maybe cultural change and all of that, it really is part of existence. And that's something that we need to be aware of. But how that existence is defined, the quality of existence, all of this varies throughout human history, and we need to be aware of that, because we think that some things are important today does not necessarily mean those same things were important 1,000,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. All of that varies as well. So it's kind of difficult to think about sometimes. Of course, we have to pay attention to what is important to us at that particular time period that we exist, but we have to recognize that there have been other ways. And just because we would make certain choices and faced with certain types of environmental stresses doesn't necessarily mean that our ancestors made those choices. They may very well have made other choices. So keeping all of that in mind, I wish you a good day, and I'll be back for topic 3. Take care, everybody.